Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's First Point USA webinar. My name's Ross Duncan. I'm going to be hosting the webinar this evening. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague and former college soccer player, Tyler Dobinson. So Tyler is he's been there, done it, worn the t-shirt. So Tyler is going to be the one kind of answering the questions, talking about his own experience, which we felt was the best way of giving everybody an introduction to college soccer scholarship opportunities in the States. So welcome to Tyler. I'll not steal his thunder too much, and we'll go into a little bit of his background shortly. So just a few things to note for this evening. You'll see in the black column on your screen, hopefully, there's a conversation box or chat box. So we're going to field some questions to Tyler as we go. But if you do have any of your own questions that you want to ask, please add them into the chat box, and we'll keep an eye on them and ask a few the sort of most relevant, popular ones towards the end of the webinar. We're also recording this evening, so if you have to disappear or if you miss a little bit or you join kind of late on, we'll be sharing the recording with you by email tomorrow. So yeah, delighted to be joined by Tyler. So just to kick things off, Tyler, if you can give us a little bit of background, firstly on your role here at First Point USA, and also the level of football that you played back in England before you headed out to the States, to give everybody an idea of where you've come from.
Sure, absolutely, and thanks for the introduction, Ross. Yeah, so to kick things off, my role here at First Point, I'm a senior sports consultant. Really, what that role consists of is, First Point as a company, I travel internationally. I will travel domestically, attending various sporting events, where essentially what we're doing is scouting and analysing athletes and their sporting abilities. So that's where we'll be evaluating their sporting performances. Are they at the level to go and obtain a scholarship to go over to the US and compete, essentially? To give you a bit of a background, yes, on myself, like Ross mentioned, I am a former student athlete. I'm also a former First Point client. I went over to the US in 2016. Prior to going to the US, my background, I was playing academy football in England. So grew up playing with Exeter City. I think I signed for them at the age of 10. Went all the way up through the sort of youth ranks. And then when my contract unfortunately didn't get renewed, that's kind of where I was looking for new opportunities and options. So fell into the higher non-league sort of men's divisions before heading out over to the US.
Great stuff. So yeah, just on that theme then, Tyler, so as an aspiring young player, why did you take the decision to go to the US?
Yeah, I think for me, being brought up in Exeter City, I was very much used to a professional environment. Now, I was looking and I was exploring at different options and opportunities in the UK, but ultimately what really sold it for me was the football side of things over in the US. I was still very much looking for something I was, familiar with at Exeter. I still wanted to be going into a professional environment. I wanted something with similar responsibilities, demands that came with being a professional athlete. And ultimately, that's exactly what I learned and found by going to the US. The demands, what goes on in your day-to-day life as a student athlete, the responsibilities, the facilities, and I'm sure some people on the webinar have seen the likes of the Premier League facilities at the end of the day that are available over there. Ultimately, that was exactly what I was looking for. So I got exactly that with the football side of things, and then again combining it with the academics. Ultimately, I felt like I was really getting the best of both worlds.
Perfect. And I'm sure there's quite a few people on the webinar that are in where the shoes that you were in sort of 9-10 years ago, but before you went to the States then. So I guess the best way of maybe describing our process is in your eyes then. So can you just talk us through how it all transpired when you first got talking to First Point USA, and maybe talk us through some of the support that you and your family received on that recruitment journey?
Sure, absolutely. Step number one was First Point inviting me to one of their events. Like I said, that's really where they're going to be assessing your suitability, your playing levels. Are you at the level to go and compete and obtain that scholarship over in the US? So I went to that trial event, really impressed on the day. I guess must have done something right, and got invited to that next step. So stage number two is where we'll conduct an interview. That's a bit more of an athletic and academic evaluation. Get to learn a little bit more about, that potential candidate's background, what's influencing their decision while they're looking to take their athletic and academic career over to the States, and then combining that with their athletic performance, coming to a decision of whether or not, we can offer a place to come on board as a First Point client. From coming on board and even leading up to getting that decision, there is always constant support, right? You'll always have especially from signing a talent management consultant at the end of the day, where they're always there to answer your questions and concerns. For me or for anyone that's going through the experience for the first time, you are really stepping into the unknown. Right, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of factors to take into consideration. So, having someone there to speak to that's gone and done the journey themselves, I always think it was a great thing for me because they could relate to me. They'd been in my shoes before. They understood the different influences, kind of what I was looking for out of a football program, but also within a university as well. So, you are awarded or allocated a talent management consultant that directly works with you through your entire process, and they are really there to support you, guide you, educate you as well where needed through the entire journey.
Perfect. And I'm sure everyone wants to know about your experience then in the States. So your first port of call was junior college at Herkimer College. Can you just talk us through a little bit about your experience there? I think you were there for 2 years. Guess why you chose there and what your first 2 years was like over there.
Yeah, for me, to kind of give a bit of an overview for anyone that doesn't or hasn't heard of junior college before, ultimately you really have 3 major governing bodies in the US. You've got the NJCAA, the NCAA, and the NAIA. Okay, so NCAA and NAIA are your 4-year institutions. The NJCAA is where you really split your journey up. So you do your freshman and sophomore year at a junior college known as JUCO, and then transfer onto your 4-year school. So for me, I chose Herkimer. Again, like I said, my decision making was very much influenced on the football side of things. And they were had everything I was looking for. They were a very football focused school, I would say. And on the academic side of things, it allowed me to go in and kind of adapt to US collegiate lifestyle, right? Of course, going in, you're trying to balance full-time football with full-time academics. So I thought that was going to be the best route for me, essentially. In terms of my playing experience at Herkimer, had a great time, really couldn't have asked for any more. Really successful program. The 2 years I was there, we made the national final both years. Unfortunately, just fell short both of the times. But that really gave me the platform to kind of get that exposure, get that recognition to kick on, and kind of go through that recruitment process all over again, where I then later went on to the NCAA.
And what would you say the playing levels were like relative to what you obviously played at pretty high level pro club academy with Exeter? So was it a big step up, or did you feel comfortable at that level?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say it was still a step up. There's some fantastic programs across all different conferences, all different levels. Herkimer, typically they will recruit out of an academy sort of standard. So, to go into a little bit of detail about sort of my team, we had 3 Americans on the team. So everyone else was recruited internationally. Not everyone was from an academy. But a lot of the boys were on the team. So it was very much to what I was used to in terms of, like I said, the responsibilities on the pitch and what was expected of you. But it also gives you the platform to grow, learn new things, but also off the pitch as well. The responsibilities of a student athlete, remaining professional and punctual.
And we often talk about the best of both worlds. You're studying for a degree and you're playing sort of like a professional athlete at the same time, but that in itself has its own challenges, because you've got to do both. You're a full-time student and a full-time athlete. How did you find the balance of the two, and was that quite difficult, trying to study and go through exams while you were playing football?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a big change when you first go in there. I would say that's probably one of the biggest obstacles I did face, was really getting accustomed to the demands of being a student athlete. But on the academic side and at all these institutions, they really do provide you with the platform to get your head down and improve your grades. Right. So when you are a student athlete, you do work very closely with your academic advisor. They will help you build your schedule around your footballing wants and needs, essentially. Again, going into some more additional resources you have while you're there, you have access to one-on-one tutors, study halls, study groups, right? So if you ever are struggling with a particular class, you always have someone that is there to help you. Everyone is willing to help you. They all want you to succeed on all fronts of that journey. So for me, once I'd actually got into the college and got my head down, I'd got together myself a schedule that I was going to stick to. That's what really allowed me to then go on and thrive on all aspects of that journey.
Absolutely. So after 2 years, Herkimer, you got a transfer to Barry University in the sunshine of Miami. So how did that transfer come about? And I guess talk us through that step from junior college into NCAA D2.
Sure. So, and that's one of the reasons, Ross, why I chose to go to a junior college first. I knew I was going there for 2 years, and it would give me that platform to kind of gain a little bit of extra exposure and recognition. Naturally, after you've completed your sophomore year, you will look to transfer in as a junior to a 4-year institution. But I also did work with First Point as well, just to kind of get some additional exposure, use their connections again. So really what happens is, as we get into the later stages, we're playing that national tournament. These 4-year institutions, coaches were all flying in to watch those games and watch me play live, ultimately. So, it did give me that chance to work on my skill set. It gave me the chance to work on my mindset, the academic side of things. I wouldn't say I was academically outstanding through high school. So it gave me the opportunity to go in there and kind of bring that GPA up to make that transfer possible. But one great thing I would always say about collegiate sport is it is broadcasted globally. Whatever level you are playing at, those games are live streamed. Collegiate coaches are watching, especially at the JUCO level. So just getting that exposure, that recognition, and then again, working with First Point to kind of boost those connections, and going through that recruitment process all over again.
Great. And how did you find the step up from the playing side? Was it a big step? And then academically, was it a sort of continuation of your studies from junior college, or did you feel it was, again, taking it on another level?
I definitely would say it was a step up on both, the athletic side of things and the academic side. I'm a strong believer that JUCO really did help me prepare for this, on both sides, both being the athletic and the academic. The biggest thing I would say is the workload on the academic side. But again, it gives you that opportunity to go in there and adapt to what's expected of you. The football side, that was definitely a big jump, in terms of competing for playing time, competing for scholarships. You're not only going up against 2-year groups, you're now going up against 4. And typically, that 4-year schools, it will kind of be open age. So it is very competitive. In terms of talk about Barry, where I went to in Miami, again, I was now going up and I was playing with international academy level players, right? I had people that played for Italy, youth side, Germany's youth side. So again, the demands were a step up, but absolutely they give you the platform there. In terms of the resources you have available, they have everything you need in terms to improve your football performances off the pitch. To talk a little bit about what I had at Barry and utilized, you're working with your strength and conditioning coaches to, become more powerful, your fitness levels. You're working every day with the likes of your physios on recovery, nutritionists, making sure you're getting the right supplements in. So it is a step up, but you kind of get accustomed to it, right? And as long as you're willing to go in and compete, you can absolutely thrive on all aspects of that journey.
Absolutely. And Miami sounds a great place to live then. So what was it like being a student in Miami, and tell us a little bit about the campus and the sports facilities that you had on offer?
Sure. So yeah, the campus, really, it was something like you would see out of your movies, really, being in the heart of Miami, first time walking on campus, I've got palm trees all around me and swimming pools that you can use, in your off time. But to speak more specifically about, those athletic facilities, like I said and mentioned earlier, really, it's that professional environment you're stepping into. They have all the latest technology, resources you could ever want. It's really what you'd find at your Premier League clubs, right? I had access to 3 different cafeterias, 4 different gyms, strength and conditioning coaches, physios, chiropractors, masseuses, nutritionists, psychologists, right? So all of those are there available for you to use on a day-to-day basis. And to kind of just emphasize, what these facilities are like. Some people may have watched the FIFA Club World Cup that just took place over the summer. 90% of those teams were training and playing on university campuses. In terms of Barry, they hosted Chelsea during that tournament. So they really are to a professional level.
Well, it's good enough for Chelsea. It must be pretty good then. And I guess a question that comes up quite a lot from people that you're speaking to, obviously in your role, and that we get on a lot of the webinars coming in, is what is a typical day in the life of a student athlete soccer player? Can you give us an idea of what your kind of typical day would entail?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very full-on schedule, I will say that. Probably something a little bit different to what most people are used to right now, and every institution will do it a little bit differently. But to speak from my experience, so first thing I would be doing is waking up at 6 a.m. and I would be going to a strength and conditioning coach, working on a tailored plan to what he thought was going to improve my sport performance. After my breakfast, all of my academic side of the day was done in the morning. So I would do a maximum of 4 classes a day, that being 4 hours. On some days, I'd only have 1 or 2. Everything after lunch and afternoon was all football related. So that would start off with a team meeting, going over what we're going to work on in training. I would then go into that physical training. I would then work in the physio room with my physio, working on some recovery. And then I would have a bit of downtime after my dinner to sit down, do some coursework, or free time, leave campus and kind of do as I please, essentially. But each institution will do it a little bit differently. You could potentially do your athletic side of things in the morning, and you do your academics in the afternoon. But that's where I mentioned, for when you do commit to a school, you are given an academic international advisor, and they will help you build your schedule around those footballing wants and needs. They will also make sure you're staying on track to graduate within your 4 years.
So a full-on day, but the rewards certainly worth it when you were playing at a good level over there then. And for those that are unfamiliar, the college soccer season is slightly different to a typical season that you would get playing over here. Can you describe the structure of what a college season was like when you were playing at Barry then?
Absolutely. Completely right, Ross. It is a little bit different to what people will be used to, in the UK. Now, you still will get a full year of football, don't get me wrong, but that competitive season, and what I mean by the competitive season is that season is made up of conference games, regional games, and then hopefully you make a push in the national tournament as well, essentially. So that will all take place within your first semester there. So you'll fly out for pre-season beginning to the middle of August, where you will have 2 weeks purely football. You'll be in doing double sessions a day, preparing you and getting ready for the upcoming season. Now, all of those competitive games and your national tournament, that all takes place from being August through till December. Okay, so can be very busy when you add in the fact of, potentially flying to other states to play games, things like that. When you go back in the spring semester, you do still have a season as such. You are still in full-time football. You'll be training every day. You will have a fixture list scheduled for you, but those games will be made up of more friendly fixtures. But what I would always say is never take away the competitive nature of them. They are all still played to a very high standard. When I was at Barry in that spring season, we would play against, top Division 1 teams. Into Miami, we'd play against USL Championship, USL 1 teams, both of which is, full-time professional football in the US. So, it is a great opportunity, again, to get some additional exposure, recognition, for potentially creating yourself life-changing opportunities afterwards.
And so the games come pretty thick and fast. So were you playing 2 games a week then in that fall period?
Yeah, typically you'll play 2 games a week. You'll have a weekend game where you'll either play on a Saturday or a Sunday, and then you'll have a midweek game where you'll either play on a Wednesday or a Thursday night, essentially.
You talked a little bit about travel there. So did you get to experience many other cities? And I guess how far did you travel? Obviously, Miami's down in Florida. And were you playing all over the country, or is the kind of conference more regionalized?
Yeah, so I was quite fortunate, especially when I went to Barry University. That did come with a lot of travel. Now, in terms of the traveling you're doing, it will all depend on the teams that fall within that conference. But really, there's a couple of trips that really stand out for me. I got the opportunity to go up to South Carolina and North Carolina, where I was away for about a week at a time. And then the other one, the furthest I likely traveled was to Seattle. So I went right from the sort of southeast of the country all the way to the furthest place you can be in Northwest. And that's where I traveled for my national semi-final over there. So really there is no limits as to how far you can travel across the US. Just going back to, what that season is scheduled, being the regional games. The regional and national games is where you're really going to start to travel and play those ranked teams.
And so what was your favorite city or favorite other university that you visited then in your time?
Yeah, well, I would probably say it was the trip over to Seattle to go play them in the national semi-final. I think the whole magnitude and, the atmosphere behind that game may have helped. But it was also going from, one extreme to the other. We were playing in December, so I was, in the 30-degree sunshine down in Miami. And then Seattle in December it can get quite cold up there. So it was a completely different experience. I had to go and play in, negative degrees in the snow coming down. But it would be Seattle University for me, for sure. Brilliant.
So you're now on the other side of the fence then, helping young aspiring players, as we mentioned at the start of their journeys then in your role. So for those that are maybe looking forward to one of our upcoming trials, what does the trial entail, and explain maybe what the coaches and the First Point scouts are looking for from players at those events?
Yep. So like you said, step 1 would be that trial. Like we mentioned, we're assessing a candidate's playing attributes. Are they at the level to go and compete? So how the session is set up is everyone is assessed individually. Okay, so no one is competing against each other for spots. First Point as an agency, we're traveling internationally and domestically. Like I said, looking for footballers that are good enough to go and play at the level over in the US. Now, what the trial day will consist of is, we'll run through a presentation, gives you a bit more of an introduction to US soccer scholarships, what coaches are kind of looking for, how they go about recruiting. And then the physical aspect of that trial, we're taking you through a bit of a technical session. So the trial itself lasts for about an hour and a half, where we'll put you through an intense warm-up. We'll go through a technical session. We'll also do a bit of a passing combination and then game-related scenarios as well. So we do really get to see, everyone's attributes, everyone's aspects, no matter what position you play. Everyone will be evaluated and be able to showcase their skills and attributes.
Great. And I guess as well as the playing side, and obviously a lot of aspiring players are going to have that talent, there's clearly an academic requirement behind it as well. What would be the sort of minimum academic standards required for the States, and then maybe going through the different levels, say for a top D1 school, for example, what would be required academically for one of those programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, going back to, those governing bodies I mentioned, having the NJCAA, the NCAA, and the NAIA, they will all have different academic requirements. Now, the sort of grading system in the US, that's what they call a GPA, right? So what that stands for is grade point average. And how that works is a 4.0 is the highest you can have. That's typically will be your straight A type student. A 3.0 is a B average student, and a 2.0 is a C average student. Okay, so really the rule of thumb is the minimum requirement you need to be eligible to become an international student athlete is to have at least a 2.0 GPA. Okay, now, of course, going into that, every institution, every university will have their own admission requirements of what's needed to be admitted into that university. So I always do like to use the saying, you are going as a student athlete, not an athlete student. So the academics does always and will always come first. But if we start targeting those sort of higher academic institutions, that's really where we're going to need to be pushing a minimum of a 3.7 to a 4.0 GPA. Okay. The other thing that goes hand in hand with that GPA is something that's called an SAT. Now, typically speaking, your higher academic institutions will require this as a non-negotiable. And what the SAT is that's a US college entry-level exam. It's an English and math proficiency test. It's all multiple choice, and you actually cannot fail that test. You simply just get a score out of 1,600. Okay, so an average SAT is about 900 to 950. But for those higher academic institutions, if we start talking about the likes of your Ivy League schools, we're going to need to be pushing, at least a 1,450 and maybe a 1,500 on those SATs.
Thanks for that explanation. Great that we've got a few questions coming in. So anyone else that wants to put a question, as I said at the start, put that in the chat box, and we'll, between myself and Tyler, we'll try and answer as many as we can at the end of this interview. So going back to, I guess, First Point's role, then one of our great strengths, I suppose, and one of our big assets is that connection with college coaches. We've been around for nearly 25 years, working with the best and most of the programs right across the state. So for those on the call then, Tyler, how important is that connection that we've got with the coaches, and how does our role work when it comes to shortlisting and placing students with the right fit and what coaches are looking for?
Yep. No, I think it's definitely a very important part of the process. I think like you said, and what stands out is First Point having, close to 25 years of experience in the industry. I'm a firm believer of that. It's allowed them to build a very respectable reputation, across the board, that being the NCAA, the NAIA, and your NJCAA institutions. When your talent management consultants are speaking with these coaches, they will absolutely take into consideration that agent's thoughts and opinions on that specific player, right? Being around for those 24 years, we've maintained and we've built a great variety of different relationships with those coaches, right? So they really do listen to those agents. It's a big part of connecting athletes with coaches. If a coach trusts a particular talent management consultant, they're a lot more likely to open up that conversation with that player, right, and start building a relationship with him. So, which can lead to offers and opportunities on the table. That's the goal at the end of the day, right? It's to maximize any candidate, any client's exposure and opportunity in terms of the amount of offers we can bring to the table.
Yeah. And talking of offers then, and talking of scholarship offers specifically, if you tell us the difference between, you've got a full scholarship, which is obviously the kind of ultimate aim, and a partial scholarship. So explain maybe what a scholarship offer is and what that would typically cover.
Yep, absolutely. So like you mentioned, Ross, you absolutely can get those full scholarships. Ultimately, a full scholarship means you are fully funded by that institution. Now, that being your tuition, your housing, your meal plan at 3 meals a day, books, everything sport related, your kit, travel, if you have to fly to another state to play a game, stay overnight in hotels before or after those games, all of that is included within that our full scholarship. Like you mentioned, there's also those partial scholarships. That's where a percentage of your costs are covered, with the family asked to contribute that shortfall. Okay, now what I will say to anyone that is on this webinar this evening is really you have two main pots of funding. Okay, you have the athletic scholarship. That is where a coach has a set budget. He is able to invest into his student athletes every year. But there is also a significant amount of funding there available on the academic side of things. So going back to, being a student before being an athlete, the higher that GPA is, the more academic funding you're going to be entitled to, essentially. So that's really where your two main sources of funding come from, but you can combine the two together, which gives you your overall scholarship package.
Great, thanks for explaining that. And again, if you decide that this is for you, and you could go forward past the trial, at the interview stage, we'll talk about that part of the process in a little bit more detail. So, but hopefully Tyler's answer kind of gives you a very good summary of what that all involves. So going back to your own experience then, Tyler, what would you say initially would be the best bits of being a student athlete, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the best aspects of being a student athlete in the US, it really was the balance between high level athletics and a quality education. I was competing daily in a very professional environment, like I said, with access to those top class facilities, coaches, and those additional resources as well. I believe it really helped me to grow as a footballer. But I also believe it helped me to grow as a person as well and become a lot more independent. At the same time of that, the structure of what a day in the life of a student athlete looks like, that really taught me discipline. I would say it taught me time management and accountability. And you learn quickly how to balance training, travel, and your academic commitments very quickly. And you can then translate that directly into any career or avenue you go down for life after the collegiate level.
And the social life, was that good too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Social life is good. Don't get me wrong. Having a good experience, having fun along with it is absolutely all part of the process. I know I did see one question at the top here where they mentioned, do you miss out on a lot of the social life being a student athlete? No, I absolutely say you wouldn't. What I would recommend is, if you do end up going to the US, is just getting yourself a timetable that you can stick to. And you will find yourself having a lot more spare time than what you would think at the end of the day. But no, there's plenty to do on campus. Campus is very lively. It's very exciting, but also off campus, right? You're not limited to remaining on campus. In your spare time, you can go out and explore your area.
Again, a few of the student athletes we've spoken to talk about going and watching other sports. Obviously American football is massive, and some of the college teams are bigger than the NFL teams, basketball as well. Did you get much chance to go and watch other sport whilst you were over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the American football you mentioned just there, Ross, is right around the corner from my school was the University of Miami, which, has a big time American football program. It has a big time basketball program. So loads of opportunity to go and watch those games. I would actually go to maybe one every other week when they're in their season. It's a lot of fun, going with other teammates, going with your friends, going back to that social life. That's kind of what I would do to socialize, essentially. But yeah, no, loads of opportunity to kind of go watch other, collegiate sports, but even professional teams in and around your area. Great place if you're an overall sports fan then. And so what would you say would be the most challenging part of being a student athlete? You've obviously talked about the balance and what have you. Would that be the most difficult thing? I would definitely say so. I would definitely say the most challenging side of things was when I first went. within my freshman year, and it was really coming to terms with how am I going to balance, full-time football with the academics. But as soon as I got that, set structure in place, that timeline, kept myself accountable, and I stuck to it, that's where I really started to kind of thrive. Other challenges may and will present themselves along the way. Injury setbacks, I went through one of them while I was there. But you couldn't be in a better place if that ever does happen. You never want to see it happen to any type of athlete, but the fact that you're there and you have everything there available for you, it got me back on the pitch playing to my best as quickly as possible.
And we'll put you on the spot then for the final question before we go to the audience then. What's the single biggest piece of advice you could give people on the webinar who are maybe considering the US or trying to position themselves as best they can for a US soccer scholarship?
Best piece of advice I would say is, if you're coming up firstly to exams, if you're sitting your GCSEs, or for those that are abroad, if you're completing high school in the next couple of years, is really just putting in the extra work and scoring as high as you can in those grades. That can significantly change your path or your opportunities that you do have available there. My other piece of advice would be, is to enjoy the whole experience and process. It is really a once in a lifetime experience you are coming into. So keep an open mind when you're exploring different schools. Ultimately there are some fantastic football programs, sporting programs, universities in every state of the US. Everyone will have their own unique journey. Everyone will have different influences of what they're looking for. So it's just about taking it all on board and kind of going in with an open mind. The US system, it does really reward players who are driven, they're organized, and they're coachable. So if you go in and you give it 100%, it can open doors to life-changing opportunities.
Great advice, and hopefully everybody on the call can take some of that on board. Thanks for that. Okay, we'll go through some of the questions then. I'll try and help out myself as well. So someone's asking if there's any trials in the UK that are not in school time. Unfortunately, most are. We do run trials also in the school holidays where we can. So summer holidays, October holidays, Easter holidays as well. So if you keep an eye out for those, and I guess in the lead up to Christmas as well, that kind of might be probably just before Christmas holidays, unfortunately, but towards those in January as well. So it is quite difficult getting facilities in the evenings, unfortunately. So, but if you aren't able to come along to one of our trials, we do look at footage. So if you've got match footage from any of your games, we can take a look at that. Tyler and the guys will sit and assess footage when we physically can't go out and see people. So that's another option as well. Similarly, whilst the majority of our trials are in the UK, we do run trials in other countries where we can. We do have scouts in other countries. So if you aren't based in the UK, you can look up our events page on our website, see where else we are running events. But if you can't get along to one of our events, you can add footage to your free digital profile as well. So hopefully that answers questions. This might be one for you. What is the age limit, Tyler, for, I guess, maybe looking at our trials specifically, but then typically what age would you be when you're out in the States?
Sure. So in terms of coming on board and taking part in a trial, age requirements are 15 to 21. Okay. In terms of going over to the US, typically, I would say the majority of clients will look at going when they're sort of 17, 18, 19. But in terms of when you're eligible to go to the States, that will all depend on when you've completed your high school, essentially, whether you're in the UK or whether you're overseas. Upon high school graduation, you are eligible to go to university in the States.
Thank you. And then someone's asked, if starting the process now, would you be in time for 2027 entry? So again, maybe just tell us the kind of time frame that it would take for the full process from start to finish on average.
Absolutely. And everyone's entry date, that will depend on, like I said, when you complete your high school graduation. But in terms of the actual process, when you come on board and you sign as a First Point client, I will say typically that can take anywhere from about 24 months up until about 32. I will say the longer we have to work with a client, the better, the more we get to understand about you, what you're looking for within your experience. But also when we're kind of taking you through that process, connecting you with those coaches, maximizing those opportunities. So absolutely, yes, if you were looking to start the process now, there would be plenty of time to have you and bring you sufficient offers or opportunities for 2027.
Yeah, so you're just under the 2-year period from now, so that would be a good time to start, Blake. Good question come in. What is the process like for the first week that you arrive in the States? I know one of our rugby athletes talked about that recently, so if you can remember that far back, Tyler, to your first week, what did that all entail?
Yeah, so like I said, you're going to be flying over to the US beginning of August to the middle of August. Now, when you fly over, you are purely there for pre-season. You'll be there before the other traditional students that aren't student athletes. So you'll only have athletes on the campus. Now, you will be doing double sessions. So you'll be working in the morning out on the pitch. Likelihood is it will be conditioning. That was what it was for me. And then your afternoon session, you'll go into more of your technical side of things and recovery, things like that. But for 2 weeks, you will be living like a professional footballer at the end of the day, or a professional athlete, whatever your sport may be. Classes won't start until the first week of September.
Great. And as Tyler said, there is a lot of support for student athletes and international athletes in particular. So you will be very well looked after on arrival. Another good question just regarding scholarships. Are you offered the scholarship just for that year, or is it for the duration of your 4 years? Maybe tell us how that can potentially work.
Sure. Now, how scholarships work, technically a coach can't take scholarship away from you unless there's a major disciplinary reason for it. What there is a great opportunity for is for you to earn additional scholarship over the course of your years. For me, that was a big influence on my decision making. I knew I needed to be going in. I wanted to be playing. I wanted to be a starter at that institution. So let's say you go in somewhere and you get yourself off to a great start. You're performing really well. You get yourself a starting spot. You're a great atmosphere to have in and around the dressing room. That coach may be inclined to award you additional scholarship, right? He will want to reinvest into you as a player, because he might not want you to transfer to another institution. If you're a major piece to his puzzle, he's going to want to keep you playing at that institution under him, right? So that's a little bit about how, those athletic scholarships work. Of course, I mentioned, there is the opportunity to get academic scholarship as well. That all depends on your GPA. So if your GPA meets a certain tier for that academic scholarship and you go over there, you get your head down, you perform really well in the classroom and your GPA goes up, you may be entitled to more academic scholarship as well. So there is a great opportunity there to really go in and bring down those costs through good performances, not only on the pitch, but in the classroom as well.
Yeah. And I guess relating to that, then just talking about GPA. So someone just asked, I guess, how the GPA is calculated. So for someone in England, for example, do your GCSE results count, or is it your A levels, or is that a combination of the two? If you can explain that to someone who's not aware.
Yeah, absolutely. So GCSEs and then BTEC A levels, they will all be combined into calculating that GPA. How a GPA calculation works is you'll get a particular score, of course, at GCSE level 1 through 9. So if you get a 7, 8, 9, for example, that's the equivalent of an A, you'd get 4 GPA points, ultimately. A 5 and a 6, you get 3. A 4, you get 2 GPA points. So that's kind of how we look at calculating the GPA. You'll look at accumulatively the amount of GPA points you have, and then you divide it by the amount of subjects you're taking, ultimately.
Thanks. And again, if you do decide to go down this route, once you become a First Point client, we would go through that GPA calculation and your academic requirements in a lot more detail at the first kind of stage of the process. Another question, I guess, just on field of study then. Someone's asking, they've heard that the US is a lot less specialized in terms of the courses that you can take than say a UK university, and that would be the case certainly when you first start studying. Someone's also asked, do you have to take an English class and a language, even if that's not what I want to study?
In terms of, if it's at terms of GCSE level, you know, English will be required. Obviously, over in the universities in America, they will be English speaking schools. So generally speaking, that will help. But in terms of taking a language at GCSE level, no, not necessarily. You don't need to have taken a language to get yourself eligible to go to the US.
Yeah. Great. And we'll go with the final question then, because that's us just about out of time. Again, back to your own experience. So you mentioned some of the longer trips you were on and traveling to Seattle. And obviously, if you are an athlete, you're going to be away from your class. So how difficult or otherwise was it to keep up with your studies when you had that requirement to travel and obviously playing a couple of times a week as well?
Sure. Yeah, no, so they absolutely will happen, you know, during the academic year. If you are having to fly to another state, maybe you're spending 2 or 3 nights away, you will be missing your classes. Of course, you'll be excused from those classes, but then it's all about you holding yourself accountable, being responsible. You will be required to go and catch up with any work you missed. You know, if there was assignments set, you know, generally speaking, your teachers will let you know that ahead of time, so you can take that work with you and you can work on it while you're on the road. But you will need to hold yourself accountable and be responsible to catch up on any work that you have missed.
Great. Okay, well, just one final question or query, I guess, in regards to English speaking, and you're probably better positioned than me to speak about this, Tyler. So what would be the requirement for going to study in the States when it comes to your sort of English language abilities?
Yeah, so in terms of someone that's first language isn't speaking, yeah. So I would say there definitely is the opportunity there to go in and improve on your language. You know, generally speaking, if you're getting English at a C level through your high school, you will be sufficient, and that will be sufficient to go in and be admitted into a university. You can also take a language test, sort of like a proficiency English test, ahead of your time to the US. Certain institutions will require a particular score, but you're able to take that test, and as long as you get a score high enough to go to that university, you'll be absolutely fine to be admitted into it.
Brilliant. Hopefully that clarifies that question for you, and I think we've covered pretty much all the kind of key questions from this evening's webinar. So yeah, thanks to Tyler for taking us through his experience of being a student athlete in the US. Hopefully that's given you a pretty good insight into what life is like for someone, if you're kind of got a related sort of background to Tyler when it comes to your football, giving you an idea of the levels. Obviously, Tyler's played at 2 different levels in the States, so that again is a good indication of where he came from and what his journey was like as well. So yeah, really appreciate Tyler's time this evening. Thanks to everybody for joining the webinar. We will be doing other webinars right throughout the year, so if you keep an eye on our website and social media channels, there might be more specific ones when it comes to maybe the academic side, for example, that we can go into a little bit more detail. I know we've got a specific women's soccer one coming up next month, but again, someone who's kind of been there through the journey, and she's just finishing her final year, so look out for that as well. As we said at the start, it's been recorded, so look out for an email coming into your inbox at some point tomorrow, and you can go through it again. We'll maybe include some additional information and links to some FAQs on that, just so any question that's not been answered, you can do a little bit of research on the resources from our website. So thanks again. Appreciate everybody joining us. For all your information needs on US soccer scholarships, head to firstpointusa.com. Thank you.